Good evening, everyone. Here from Finland, this is Michael Robbins, and I'll be leading this meditation today, and it is on the soul of nations, particularly what you would like to see eliminated from the behavior of your particular nation so that the soul can express more fully, and what you would like to see added to that expression, which is probably a soul quality. And hopefully in the place where you are, you know something of the ray and the sign of the soul. Let's say, well, for the United States, it's Aquarius and the second ray soul. For the UK, it's Gemini and the second ray soul. For Russia, it's Aquarius and the seventh ray soul. For Australia, it's it is the sign Virgo, I think, and the second ray soul. New Zealand, Gemini and the second ray soul. Canada, it is Taurus and the second ray soul. I know I'm going to leave some out here. There are all these countries in Europe, of course, where you may be, and maybe too many to mention, and some of the rays are not given, unfortunately, but they will be, I think, before long, when DK begins his work again. If you're in France, it's Pisces and the fifth ray soul, quite different, isn't it? And in Spain, it is, let's see, Sagittarius and the sixth ray soul, and in Italy, Leo and the sixth ray soul. Greece is not given in the ray. Virgo and Cancer are very important there, and I think Libra too, for the beauty aspect. Anyway, please forgive me if I haven't mentioned your country, but if you perhaps know which planetary center rules your country, for instance, whether it's New York or London or Geneva, Darjeeling or Tokyo, you can have some connection there. But it's not really dependent on rays and signs right now. They might correlate. It's just a question of how the soul of your nation can better express. And when it does, of course, it will be possible that the work of the hierarchy will be facilitated in your nation, and for sure, when the causal body reaches a certain point of development, one of the new esoteric schools can come into expression. We should also consider Brazil with its Leo soul and the fourth ray, and Germany with its Aries soul and the fourth ray. Well, I'd have to go through all the map, but at least maybe it has covered some. And of course, across it all is the fourth ray of humanity. I think the present soul ray of humanity, the fourth ray, and it will one day be the great second ray of love wisdom that will rule humanity. Now I'd like to read a little bit from the Destiny of the Nations. That's what Tuya and I are doing. We're, of course, when I'm doing the meditation, I'm not reading the finish, but if anybody needs it, you can just let us know. And if we've, missed the finish when I'm reading, then we'll get it to you. So we're talking about the Shambhala force, the great energy of Shambhala, really. And these are words by Master DK, mostly. I may say a thing or two. Only twice before in the history of mankind has this Shambhala energy made its appearance. I think in a very full way, that is true. In a way that really is planetary in its scope, and maybe not just affecting humanity. This Shambhala energy has made its appearance and caused its presence to be felt through the tremendous changes which were brought about. And when were these periods of these the first one is actually probably an initiation of our planetary logos. Number one, when the first great human crisis occurred at the time of the individualization of man in ancient Lemuria. And I'll just add that that was in the middle part of the Lemurian root race, about 21 million years ago. We can say such words as that, but what do they really mean to us in terms of spans of time that we can relate to at this present moment? As souls, we can relate to these great spans of time. And then DK says, and number two, at the time of the great struggle in Atlantean days between the lords of light and the lords of material expression. I'll add, it was a great battle, and it took place, they say, somewhere on the plains south of the city that is now called New Delhi. It was a decisive battle for the future of mankind, and though the Lords of Light by small measure won that battle, they had to withdraw to let humanity work out its fate a bit more on its own. And they're now re-emerging with the externalization of the hierarchy 4 million years later. So going on then from the Tibetan about the Shambhala force, this little known divine energy now streams out from the holy center. There have been a couple of these impacts recently, 1825, 1975, the year 2000. Maybe the Tibetan will let us know a bit more about when we can expect these impacts. I think he would probably tell us so that we could prepare, but Shambhala is drawing closer and closer to humanity and is attempting to arouse the spiritual will in man. The Tibetan goes on, it embodies in itself the energy which lies behind the world crisis at the moment. Now he's speaking of the Second World War, very decisive for the future of humanity. It almost was destroyed. Humanity was almost destroyed, we're told. The Tibetan goes on, it is the will of God to produce certain radical and momentous changes in the consciousness of the race. So let us say we are living in momentous times when humanity stands on the verge of at least some of its number entering the fifth kingdom, the kingdom of souls. So big changes in the consciousness of the race, and the Tibetan says, which will completely alter man's attitude to life and his grasp of the spiritual, esoteric, and subjective essentials of living. So a new heaven, a new earth, and a new consciousness, we might say, are being prepared during the age of Aquarius, and this will release many human beings from the hall of ignorance, where they presently do not know that God dwells within them, nor that they are essentially souls. The Tibetan goes on. It is this force which will bring about, in conjunction with second ray force, that tremendous crisis imminent in human consciousness, which we call the second crisis. Individualization was first, okay? The second crisis, he says, the initiation of the race into the mystery of the ages, into that which has been hid from the beginning. So we do live in amazing times. And then the Tibetan says, the first crisis, as you have been taught, was the crisis of individualization, wherein man became a living soul, and we might add, a self-conscious soul. The second crisis is the immediate one of racial initiation. Now, not every single human being, but enough to really raise the whole level of the consciousness and the ability of humanity. So he says, the immediate one of racial initiation made possible, if you will but believe it, by the many individual initiations which have lately been undergone by those members of the human family who had vision and a willingness to pay the price. And let me add that there is no real initiation without the factor of sacrifice. Now, there are many ways to approach sacrifice, and one of them is through war. And recently I read that in that tremendous war in Atlantis, many people stepped onto the path of initiation 4 million years ago, who would not be treading that path even now without the pressure of that war. Well, we go on a little bit here. This particular and somewhat unusual ray energy is expressing itself in two ways, or perhaps it would be more correct, the Tibetan says, to say in two ways that are recognizable by man, because it should be remembered that these ray forces express themselves as potently in other kingdoms in nature as they do in the human. For instance, one phase of the destructive aspect of first ray force, the Shambhala force we're speaking of here, has been the organized and scientific destruction of forms in the animal kingdom. I know it seems very hard and cruel that this is happening, but I think it is to help liberate the consciousness of those beings who are trapped inside animal bodies that have limited potential. He goes on, this is the destroying force as manipulated by man. Another phase of this same force, which can be noted in relation to the unfoldment of consciousness in subtle but powerful ways, can be seen in the effect which human beings have upon domestic animals, hastening their evolution. Always the first ray, when liberated in the right direction, will hasten, It is a driving force. Hastening their evolution, he says, and stimulating them into forms of advanced instinctual activity. I mention these two phases as illustration of the effect of first-ray energy in the animal kingdom as expressed through human activity. Now, we'll read more next week, but about this mysterious first-ray Shambhala force, which more and more is impacting humanity through Shambhala impacts, and because the time has come for the recognition of the true nature of the will. When Christ comes, he will bring not only the love and the light, he will be surrounded by those who strengthen his will, and a new aspect of will be liberated within humanity. And that will be a very exciting thing. It will be in this age of Aquarius, with the planet Uranus so prominent in Aquarius, and as we probably know, the monadic ray of Uranus is the first ray of will and power, the electric ray, and the only other planet of which we know in our solar system that has that monadic first ray is Earth itself. So there's a definite relation monadically between these two. So that's all I'll read right now from the Destiny of the Nations, but do prepare yourself to increasingly cultivate the true meaning of will. Read about it, read the compilations that we have, and we'll be doing some discussion on compilations regarding the will and the Shambhala force on webinars and so forth, and try to understand what your life would be like if you could grasp the nature of the spiritual will working from the atomic plane, and even maybe the monadic will working from the monadic plane. The Destiny of the Nations, a wonderful book, and one that should be studied very carefully to promote right international relations, an aspect of right human relations. So we call upon the light, the light of the soul, we call upon it. We try to find it within our nature and imagine that it descends so that we can have the mind held steady in the light. And we breathe in this light of the soul. Sometimes visualized as pure white, sometimes more the golden yellow-orange color. Both are useful. And as we have gathered here to meditate and to think, our work together can help others, because we send out into the mental field and in general into the three lower worlds energies which will help redeem and uplift. We're coming to the high point of the spiritual year very soon. Easter, the forces of restoration, Wesak, the forces of enlightenment, and Gemini, the forces of reconstruction. Try to realize that you are helping to rebuild this world along the right lines. And even though we're just little people, our small contribution can make a difference, especially when united to the contributions of others, and we can recondition and elevate humanity and the planet. So let us try to think in planetary terms, even though our lives may be quite local. You can never tell where a thought you create may do some good anywhere on the planet, or of course the opposite if we allow ourselves to fall down and lower our vibration. So we are responsible, actually, in a global sense. Try to realize that whatever it is you think or do, it has its effect. Now, each one of us lives in a nation. How nations are formed, well, it's rather esoteric. DK hints at the kind of energy that draws certain people together in certain places. And it's not just when a certain government may be formed or independence declared or anything like that. It's something much more occult. And we're not always born in the same nation. Much depends on the qualities that are needed and also that we have to absorb. But we live somewhere now, either because we are born there, probably in the majority of cases, or some people just move and live much of their life elsewhere. They have kind of dual global citizenship. So just first part here is just tune in. It's a subtle thing, but just try to tune in from yourself as a soul into the soul of your nation. Now we're going to think of our nation in two ways. The first way is, what qualities would you like to celebrate about your nation and see either strengthened or built in to the expression of your nation? This is the positive side. What qualities would you celebrate in relation to your nation, seeing those qualities strengthened? Or what qualities would you like to see built in more of within your nation? And as you think of such qualities, visualize them being strengthened in your nation or built in, showing up more often. Visualize that, affirm that. And sometimes by mentioning something 3 times, you give it a kind of additional magical power. For instance, if I was working with the positive qualities of the United States in which I'm a citizen, I might say 3 times, strengthen loving understanding, strengthen loving understanding, strengthen loving understanding. And that I would visualize this happening. So the causal bodies of nations are nowhere near complete. Probably the causal bodies of the individual is much more complete. So we have maybe a long way to go as these nations develop and round out these virtues found in the causal body. But now the second approach is, if we want these positive qualities to express, and of course we can keep thinking about them, we have to eliminate certain qualities that are in the way and probably relate to the, among other things, to the sign and ray of the personality. But you don't need to concern yourself too much about that right now. Just meditate on what you would like to see thrown out, driven out, excluded from the expression of your country, because such things are obstacles to the soul expression. So focus on those and see them ejected, and instead the qualities of the soul replacing them. It's the same, as purifying a personality in the individual sense. It's done on the path of probation, and nations also pass through a probationary period before they become an initiate nation. I don't know if there are any yet, but it will be coming. So we have to get rid of these negative things on the kind of burning ground preceding the possibility of initiation. What to cast out? What to cast out? Treatise on White Magic, page 473, 474. Cast out, it says, all fear, all hate, all greed. Look out and up. Whatever qualities are in the way, they must be cast out. So it is a way of meditating and thinking, what does my nation need? What does it have to be celebrated? What does it need to be strengthened and built in? What does it need to be cast out? So let's not only think of our little individual selves, let's think of our groups this way and our nations this way. And of course, ultimately, within our range, we will think of humanity this way. And then we can continue to meditate on how can I help celebrate those qualities? How can I help strengthening and building in qualities which are needed? How can I help eliminate the obstacles in my nation? And all of this will be rightly building the causal body of my nation and helping it play its part in the cooperation, the harmony, the love, which must bind the nations together, hopefully very much in the age of Aquarius. Until we become one world, not fragmented, not dissonant, not at war, one harmonious, soul-infused planet. And let us together, we will sound the great invocation. invoking that state of light, love, and power. And friends, as world servers that we attempt to be, let us sound the new group of world servers mantram, sometimes called the 5 o'clock mantram, every day. May the power of the one life pour through the group of all true servers. May the love of the one soul characterize the lives of all who seek to aid the great ones. May we fulfill our part in the one work through self-forgetfulness, harmlessness, and right speech. We thank you for meditating with us today. The full moon period is coming up, and we'll be having many webinars and broadcasts. The sacred pentagram approach to the equinox, to Aries, and the pre-full moon and the exact full moon moment, and the ingress. All of this is coming up, and we hope you will be able to join us either for webinars or for broadcasts. The work we do interiorly can certainly help, and we will persist in this, though people say, well, you're only thinking about it. Master Moria considers a thought an indestructible force. So we will work together in that way, with our esoteric training adding the power to make a better world from the esoteric perspective. So Tuya and I bid you farewell until tomorrow, and we'll continue on the evening schedule, and in the name of Lord Maitreya, all of us attempt to do these things.